What if your pain, whether it's heartbreak, anxiety, or even chronic physical discomfort, was more than just suffering? What if it was a message, a desperate signal from deep within, trying to guide you towards something you've been avoiding? Carl Jung, one of history's most profound psychologists, believed exactly that. Pain isn't just random, it's meaningful. And if you listen closely, it might just reveal the key to your deepest healing. Most of us see pain as an enemy, something to numb, escape, or fix as quickly as possible. Modern psychology often treats it the same way, focusing on symptom management rather than asking, why is this here? What is it trying to show me? But Carl Jung took a radically different approach. He saw pain, emotional or physical, as a messenger from the unconscious, a sign that something deeper needs attention. Jung taught that suffering isn't meaningless. It can point to buried trauma, unlived parts of ourselves, or even a necessary transformation we've been resisting. Ignoring it only makes it louder. But if we learn to listen, pain can become one of our greatest teachers. In this video, we'll explore Jung's perspective on pain, how it connects to the shadow, archetypes, and personal growth. By the end, you'll see your struggles in a new light and discover how to decode their hidden messages. Because sometimes, the thing hurting you most isn't there to break you, but to wake you up. Carl Jung believed that pain, whether emotional, psychological, or even physical, was never meaningless. Instead, he saw it as a symbol, a coded message from the unconscious mind trying to surface. Unlike mainstream psychology, which often treats pain as a malfunction to be fixed, Jung argued that suffering was a signal, a way for the psyche to demand attention. When we ignore these signals, they grow louder, manifesting as chronic distress, illness, or self-sabotage. But if we learn to listen, pain can become a guide, leading us toward the parts of ourselves we've neglected, denied, or forgotten. At the heart of Jung's perspective is the unconscious mind, the vast, hidden realm of our psyche that stores repressed memories, unprocessed trauma, and suppressed desires. Pain, in this sense, is often the unconscious forcing what has been buried back into awareness. A deep loneliness might point to an abandoned childhood need for love. Persistent anger could be unexpressed boundaries finally demanding to be heard. Even physical symptoms, like tension or fatigue, might symbolize an inner conflict, perhaps a life out of alignment with one's true self. Jung's approach invites us to ask, what is this pain trying to say? What part of me have I refused to acknowledge? But not all pain is purely personal. Jung also introduced the idea of the collective unconscious, the layer of the psyche that connects all of humanity through shared symbols and experiences known as archetypes. Some suffering isn't just ours alone. It echoes universal human struggles, the fear of abandonment, the weight of responsibility, the search for meaning. For example, chronic anxiety might not just be about personal stress, but a reflection of the archetype of the wanderer, someone subconsciously terrified of never finding their true path. In this way, pain can be both deeply personal and strangely universal, linking us to the timeless struggles of being human. Consider someone plagued by relentless anxiety. On the surface, they might believe their fear is irrational, a glitch in their mind. But through a Jungian lens, that anxiety could be a symbol of something deeper, a soul-level resistance to living a life that feels inauthentic. The psyche, in its own mysterious language, might be screaming, "You're not fulfilling your purpose." The pain isn't random, it's a wake-up call. And until the message is understood, the suffering will persist, morphing into different forms until it's finally confronted. Jung's radical idea? Pain isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. The more we resist its lessons, the longer it stays. But if we dare to listen, to decode its symbols, we don't just heal, we transform. At the core of Jung's psychology lies a provocative truth. We are not entirely who we think we are. Beneath the surface of our conscious identity lurks the shadow, the hidden reservoir of traits, impulses, and emotions we've denied, repressed, or deemed unacceptable. These might be childhood wounds we've buried, aspects of our personality we're ashamed of, or even strengths we've been too afraid to claim. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. Instead, it seeps out in disguised forms, through projections, irrational reactions, and, most powerfully, through pain. Pain, whether emotional distress or physical tension, often acts as a flare shot up by the shadow, signaling where we've been dishonest with ourselves. Unexplained anger might mask deep-seated grief. Chronic guilt could be the shadow's way of punishing us for desires we've disowned. Even bodily symptoms, like migraines or digestive issues, can manifest as somatic metaphors for what the psyche hasn't processed. A clenched jaw might symbolize words left unspoken. A stiff back could be the weight of responsibilities we resent carrying but refuse to acknowledge. The body, in Jung's view, keeps score when the mind won't. Consider a case where a high-achieving professional suffers from persistent back pain. Medical exams find no physical cause, yet the ache lingers. Through therapy, they uncover a startling connection. Their pain flares most during moments of unexpressed frustration, toward a domineering boss, a demanding partner, or even their own perfectionism. The back, quite literally, bears the burden of resentment they've refused to feel, let alone voice. The pain, then, isn't random. It's the shadow's way of forcing them to confront suppressed rage before it corrodes them further. To begin unraveling your own shadow's messages, try this simple reflection. What emotion is my pain hiding? Close your eyes and revisit a recent moment of distress, anxiety, a physical twinge, a surge of irritation. Ask yourself, if this sensation had a voice, what would it say? What am I refusing to feel? Don't rush the answer. The shadow speaks in whispers, not shouts. You might discover that your exhaustion isn't just about lack of sleep, but a soul-deep hunger for rest your ambition has overridden. Or that your jealousy toward a friend mirrors your own disowned creative yearnings. The shadow isn't a monster to vanquish, it's a disowned teacher. The more we shine light on it, the less it needs to scream through pain. And in that reckoning, we reclaim lost parts of ourselves, turning suffering into integration. As Jung famously warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Your pain might just be the first clue to breaking that spell. Jung discovered that our most profound suffering often follows ancient, universal patterns, what he called archetypes. These timeless psychic blueprints reveal that pain is not just personal. Sometimes, it's an initiation into a deeper level of being. One of the most powerful examples is the wounded healer, symbolized by Chiron from Greek mythology. Chiron, a centaur wounded by a poisoned arrow, could never heal his own injury. Yet through his pain, he became a legendary healer of others. This archetype shows us that our deepest wounds often contain our greatest gifts. The therapist who heals trauma because they've faced their own. The artist who creates beauty from their brokenness. Your pain might feel like a curse, but in the alchemy of the psyche, it could be the very thing that awakens your purpose. This transformation mirrors the hero's journey, another fundamental archetype. In every mythic story, the hero must endure trials, face darkness, and descend into the unknown before emerging renewed. Suffering in this light isn't an interruption of life, it's the catalyst of evolution. Think of a caterpillar dissolving in its chrysalis. What looks like destruction is actually the process of becoming something new. Psychological pain follows the same pattern. A crushing failure forces you to rebuild yourself wiser. Heartbreak shatters illusions, making space for truer love. Even when it feels meaningless, suffering often plays the role of the ruthless but necessary guide, pushing you toward a version of yourself you couldn't have imagined otherwise. Consider the archetypal dark night of the soul, a term borrowed from mysticism that Jung applied to periods of utter despair, when old identities crumble and life seems devoid of meaning. Someone in the grip of depression might feel they're being annihilated, but in archetypal terms, this is the ego's death preceding rebirth. Like the phoenix burning to ashes, What feels like an end is often the prelude to a more authentic beginning. A woman who loses her career might later realize it freed her from a path that was never hers. A man who survives rock-bottom addiction discovers a humility and compassion he'd never have learned in comfort. The darkness, agonizing as it is, becomes the womb for a new consciousness. These archetypes remind us, your suffering might be ancient. Not in the sense that it's faded, but that you're walking a path countless souls have walked before, one that leads, however painfully, toward wholeness. The wounded healer, the hero's journey, the dark night, they all point to the same truth. Pain that feels like an ending might actually be the labor pains of a becoming you can't yet see. The first and often most challenging step in working with pain is simply to stop running from it. We live in a culture that teaches us to numb, distract, or fix discomfort as quickly as possible, but Jungian psychology invites the opposite approach. Sit with your pain. This doesn't mean wallowing in suffering, but rather creating space to observe it with mindful curiosity. Notice where it lives in your body. Observe the emotions tied to it without judgment. Avoidance only deepens the unconscious split. Presence begins the healing. Like a child acting out for attention, your pain may intensify at first when you finally turn toward it, because what has been ignored is desperate to be heard. But this is where the alchemy begins. Once you've created space to listen, begin asking Jungian questions to uncover deeper layers. Start with, what part of me is hurting the most? This shifts the focus from, why is this happening to me, to what within me needs care? Another potent question, what story is my pain telling? Pain often carries a narrative, perhaps one of betrayal, abandonment, or stifled potential. For example, a chronic sense of emptiness might whisper, "You've abandoned your true passions for security." A tight chest could be muttering, "You're carrying grief you've never released." These questions aren't about quick answers, but about starting an inner dialogue with the unconscious. To go deeper, journaling and dream analysis can become powerful tools. After sitting with your pain, write freely, not to craft perfect sentences, but to let the unconscious speak. Notice recurring themes, symbols, or emotions. Dreams, too, are the unconscious mind's purest language. If you're working through pain, keep a dream journal by your bed. You might discover that a dream of being chased mirrors your waking avoidance of a difficult truth, or that a broken object in a dream reflects how you perceive your self-worth. The psyche speaks in metaphors. Your task is to learn its vocabulary. Finally, integration is where insight becomes transformation. Understanding your pain is only the beginning. The real work is embodying the lesson. If you've uncovered repressed anger, shadow work might involve healthy assertiveness training. If your pain reveals a creative block, integration could mean finally starting that abandoned project. For some, therapy or bodywork, like somatic experiencing, helps bridge the gap between insight and change. Others might express and process through art, movement, or ritual. The key is to honor the message by taking concrete steps, not just thinking about them. Pain that has been fully heard and integrated doesn't disappear. It loses its destructive power and often becomes a source of unexpected strength. Decoding pain isn't about finding a single answer, but about entering into an ongoing conversation with yourself. Each time you listen, really listen, you reclaim a lost piece of your wholeness. And in that reclamation, you might just discover that what you once called an enemy was actually a guide in disguise. History's most transformative figures, artists, healers, and visionaries, often share one thing in common. They didn't just endure their pain, they alchemized it. Frida Kahlo turned physical agony into breathtaking art that still speaks to millions. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust to develop logotherapy, proving meaning can be found even in unimaginable suffering. Therapists who've healed their own trauma often become the most compassionate guides for others. These examples aren't about glorifying suffering, but showing what becomes possible when we stop fighting our pain and start dialoguing with it. Your deepest struggle might contain the seeds of your unique contribution, but only if you're willing to look at it with courageous curiosity. That said, a crucial distinction must be made. Not all pain is psychological. While Jung's approach offers profound insights, it's not a substitute for medical care. Chronic physical symptoms, clinical depression, or neurological conditions aren't necessarily messages to decode. They may require professional treatment. The key is balance. Exploring the symbolic meaning of a backache doesn't mean ignoring a herniated disc. Psychological work complements physical healing. It doesn't replace it. If your pain persists or worsens, consult a healthcare provider first, then explore what else it might be saying. The wisest approach to pain is both and not either or. Medication might manage your anxiety while shadow work uncovers its roots. Physical therapy can address knee pain as you also examine whether you've been unable to stand for yourself in relationships. True healing happens when we honor pain as a multidimensional experience, sometimes a medical issue, sometimes a psychological messenger, often both. The goal isn't to spiritualize suffering, but to develop the discernment to know when to treat it and when to listen to it. When we strike this balance, we stop being victims of our pain and become students of it instead. What if, instead of seeing your pain as something to escape, you began to approach it as one of your most profound teachers? Throughout this journey into Jung's wisdom, we've uncovered a radical truth. Your suffering isn't random. Whether it manifests as emotional turmoil, physical discomfort, or existential unrest, pain carries a hidden curriculum, one that invites you to uncover buried truths, reclaim lost parts of yourself, and ultimately grow into greater wholeness. The ache you've been resisting might be the very thing preparing you for your next evolution. This doesn't mean glorifying suffering or passively enduring it. It means meeting your pain with curiosity rather than fear. The next time you feel that familiar sting, whether it's heartache, anxiety, or frustration, pause and ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? You might be surprised by the answers that emerge when you stop running and start listening. Every great transformation begins with this simple but courageous act of turning toward what hurts, rather than away. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below, what's one pain, emotional, physical, or spiritual, that you're ready to understand more deeply? Have you ever noticed a pattern in your suffering that led to a breakthrough? Let's create a conversation where we can learn from each other's experiences. If you want to dive deeper into these ideas, I highly recommend Jung's Man and His Symbols for an accessible introduction to his work, or The Undiscovered Self for insights into personal transformation. These books might just help you decode more of your own inner language. Finally, if this perspective resonated with you, consider liking this video and subscribing for more content on Jungian psychology, shadow work, and the hidden dimensions of the psyche. The journey of self-discovery doesn't end here, it only begins. And remember, the pain you're facing today might be the very thing that guides you toward the life you're meant to live. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.